The rain was already coming down in sheets when my stepmother Angela screamed those two words that changed my life forever. Get out. She said it with so much venom, so much absolute certainty, like I was something toxic that needed to be removed from her perfect house immediately. I was 15 years old. I had no jacket, no phone, no money, just the clothes on my back and a backpack with half-finished homework inside. And 4 hours later, when the hospital called her with news she wasn't expecting, when she heard what the doctor said about the girl she'd thrown into a November storm, her face went from smug satisfaction to absolute horror in about 3 seconds flat. But by then, everything had already changed in ways she could never have imagined. My name is Maya Torres. I'm 29 years old now, and I'm sitting in my Seattle office looking at an email that just arrived. The subject line says urgent family matter, and it's from Angela's lawyer. After 14 years of complete silence, after building an entire life she knows nothing about, she wants something from me. She needs something from me. And the irony is so thick I could choke on it, because the woman who threw me away like garbage now needs the one person she tried to destroy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to November 2010, to the night everything fell apart and somehow, impossibly, came together in ways I never saw coming. I need you to understand something about my family before we go any further. Before I tell you about that storm and what happened after, my mother died when I was 8 years old, sudden brain aneurysm. She was making breakfast one morning, scrambled eggs and toast, and then she was on the floor, and my father was screaming and paramedics were rushing in. And by the time I understood what was happening, she was already gone. Just like that, 1 minute I had a mom who braided my hair and sang off key in the car. The next minute I had a funeral and a black dress that was too big and adults whispering about how tragic it all was. My father, Marcus Torres, he fell apart after mom died. And I don't mean that poetically. I mean he literally could not function. He stopped going to work, stopped paying bills, stopped doing anything except sitting in his room staring at photographs. I was 8 years old taking care of a grown man who couldn't remember to eat. Child Protective Services got involved after about 6 months. A neighbor had called them, concerned about the little girl who was buying groceries with crumpled bills and walking herself to school every morning. They didn't take me away, but they gave my father an ultimatum: get help or lose custody. So he got help, therapy, medication, grief counseling, and slowly, very slowly, he started to come back to life. But here's the thing about grief: it changes people permanently. The man who came out of that darkness wasn't the same man who went in. He was quieter, more fragile, like he was always one bad day away from shattering completely. And I learned very young that my job was to make sure he never had that bad day. I became the good daughter, the easy daughter, the daughter who never caused problems or asked for too much or reminded him of everything he'd lost. 2 years after my mother died, my father met Angela Whitmore at a grief support group. She was a widow too. Her husband had died of cancer, and she had a daughter named Stephanie who was 12, 4 years older than me. Angela was beautiful in that carefully maintained way, blonde highlights, perfect nails, the kind of woman who always looked put together, even in casual clothes. My father was drawn to her like a drowning man reaching for a life raft. She represented normalcy, stability, a second chance at the family he'd lost. They got married 8 months after they met, and suddenly I had a stepmother and a stepsister, and a whole new life I never asked for. At first, things seemed okay. Angela cooked dinner every night, kept the house clean, made sure my father took his medication. She was efficient and organized, and exactly what my father needed. But she looked at me like I was a stray cat someone had brought into her clean house. Tolerated but never quite welcome. Stephanie was worse. She'd been an only child for 12 years, the center of her mother's universe. And now she had to share space with some sad little girl whose mom was dead. She made sure I knew I didn't belong. Small cruelties at first. Moving my things, borrowing my clothes without asking, telling her friends I was weird. But it escalated over the years. By the time I was 15, Stephanie had perfected the art of making my life miserable while looking completely innocent. The thing about living with people who don't want you is that you become hyper-aware of everything. You learn to read moods, anticipate reactions, make yourself small and quiet and invisible. I spent years walking on eggshells, trying to be perfect enough that they couldn't find fault. Trying to be so good that maybe, just maybe, they'd decide I was worth keeping. But perfection is exhausting, and I was so tired. School was my escape. I threw myself into academics, into extracurriculars, into anything that kept me away from that house and the people in it who looked at me like I was a problem they didn't know how to solve. I was good at school, really good. Honor roll every semester, advanced placement classes, teachers who actually seemed to like me. It was the one place where being smart and quiet was an advantage instead of a liability. I joined the debate team, the robotics club, anything with meetings that ran late so I had a reason not to come home. My father noticed, I think, but he never said anything. He was too grateful that I wasn't causing problems, too relieved that at least one part of his complicated life was running smoothly. He never asked why I spent so much time at school, never wondered if maybe his daughter was avoiding home for a reason. Angela resented my academic success. I realize that now, every award I won, every achievement I earned, it was a reminder that her daughter Stephanie was average, unremarkable, someone who coasted through life, expecting things to be handed to her. Stephanie had failed 2 classes sophomore year, barely passed the rest, spent most of her time with her boyfriend Tyler, a 19-year-old with a car and no job, and big plans that never materialized. Angela made excuses for her constantly. She's going through a phase, she's figuring things out, she just needs time. But me, I wasn't allowed phases or mistakes or time. I was expected to be perfect and grateful and quiet. Any achievement I earned was dismissed. Any problem I had was an inconvenience. November 2010, my sophomore year, I was 15 years old and I was tired. Not just physically tired, though I was that too, but tired in my bones, tired in my soul, tired of performing perfection for people who would never appreciate it. I'd been accepted into a prestigious summer program at MIT, a robotics intensive for high school students, full scholarship, room and board included. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. My teacher had helped me apply, had written me a recommendation so glowing I'd cried when she showed me a copy. This program could change my future, open doors I didn't even know existed. But it cost money, not for tuition, that was covered, but for travel, for supplies, for the things the scholarship didn't include, about 800 total. I'd been saving my allowance for months. Had almost 300 put aside, I just needed a little help with the rest. I asked my father on a Tuesday evening, showed him the acceptance letter, explained the program, tried to make him understand how important this was. He looked at the paperwork with those tired eyes and said he'd have to talk to Angela about it. Finances were her department now. He didn't make decisions without her approval anymore. I should have known right then that I was in trouble, but I was 15 and hopeful and stupid enough to believe that maybe, just this once, she'd see me as something worth investing in. I was so wrong. Angela said no flatly, immediately, without even considering it. She said 800 was too much money for a summer program, said I should get a job if I wanted things, said Stephanie needed a car, and that's where the extra money was going. My father just sat there nodding along, not even trying to advocate for me. And I realized in that moment that I had never really had a father, not after Mom died. I'd had a man who needed me to be easy, to be manageable, to not cause waves. I tried to argue, tried to explain that this wasn't just a summer program, this was my future, my education, my chance to get out of this house and build something better. Angela's face went hard. She told me I was ungrateful, that I should be thankful they'd taken me in, that my mother would be ashamed of how selfish I'd become. That last part, that was calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing, invoking my dead mother to make me shut up and complain. It worked. I went to my room, closed the door, and cried into my pillow until my throat hurt. But I didn't give up. I couldn't give up. This program was too important. I got a job at a coffee shop near school, started working every shift I could fit around classes and homework, made about $8 a week after taxes. I put every penny into a jar hidden in the back of my closet. I was going to earn that 800 myself. I was going to prove I didn't need Angela's approval or my father's support. I could do this on my own, and I did. By late October, I had 520 saved. I was so close, just a few more weeks, and I'd have enough. I could already see myself at MIT, surrounded by people who actually wanted to learn, who valued education, who wouldn't make me feel bad for being smart. But Stephanie noticed, of course she noticed. She went through my room regularly. Invasion of privacy was just another Tuesday in the Torres household. She found the jar, counted the money, and immediately went to her mother with a story. She told Angela I'd been stealing from her purse, from the grocery money, from my father's wallet. She said she'd been noticing cash going missing for months, and now she'd found the proof hidden in my room. It was a lie. Every word of it was a lie. But Angela believed her immediately. Instantly, without question, because that's what Angela wanted to believe, that I was the problem, that I was the reason her perfect blended family wasn't working. Angela confronted me on November 12th. I came home from school, and she was waiting in the living room with Stephanie standing behind her, wearing this smug little smile. Angela demanded to know where I'd gotten the money. I tried to explain, tried to show her my pay stubs from the coffee shop. Tried to make her understand that I'd earned every single dollar, but she wasn't listening. She'd already decided I was guilty. She said no 15-year-old could earn 520 in a few weeks. Said I was lying, said the pay stubs were fake, said I was a thief and a liar and she'd had enough. My father got home from work right then, walked into this ambush without any context. Angela showed him the money, told him I'd stolen it, told him she'd given me chance after chance, but I kept causing problems. Stephanie started crying, actual tears, saying she'd tried to help me, tried to be a good sister, but I just kept doing these terrible things. I looked at my father, really looked at him, waiting for him to defend me, to ask questions, to at least consider that maybe his daughter wasn't a criminal, but he just looked tired, so tired, like this was one more problem he didn't have the energy to deal with. And in that moment, I realized he was going to choose them. He was going to choose the easy path, the path where Angela was right and I was wrong, and he didn't have to fight anyone. I could see it in his eyes before he even opened his mouth, and something inside me just broke. 7 years of being perfect, of being easy, of never causing problems, and it didn't matter. I had never mattered. Not really. I was just the ghost of his dead wife, a reminder of everything he'd lost. And he wanted me gone as much as Angela did. Angela told me to pack a bag, said I could stay with my grandmother for a while until I learned to behave, until I learned respect and honesty, and all the things she'd apparently failed to teach me. I started toward my room, thinking I'd at least grab some clothes. But Angela grabbed my arm. No, she said, "You go now? You can come back for your things when you've apologized and proven you can be trusted." I looked at my father one more time, give him one last chance to be a parent, to protect his daughter, to do something, anything. But he just stood there, looking at the floor, a coward wrapped in grief, using his dead wife as an excuse to abandon his living daughter. The storm had been building all day, dark clouds, temperature dropping, wind picking up. By the time Angela opened the front door and shoved me onto the porch, the rain was coming down hard. Freezing cold November rain that soaked through clothes in seconds. I had my school backpack, nothing else, no jacket, no phone, because Angela had taken it months ago claiming I hadn't earned the privilege. No money because my 520 was sitting on the coffee table. Evidence in a crime I didn't commit. No way to call for help. Nowhere to go except my grandmother's house, my mother's mother, Elena Torres, who lived 9 miles away on the other side of town. The door slammed behind me. I heard the deadbolt click, and I stood there on that porch for maybe a minute, maybe an hour. Time felt weird. I was shaking, not from cold yet, from shock, from the realization that my father had just chosen his new wife over his own daughter, that I was truly, completely alone. The rain kept falling, soaking through my clothes, through my hair, running down my face, mixing with tears. I didn't even realize I was crying. I had to move. Had to start walking. Standing here wasn't going to change anything. 9 miles doesn't sound far when you say it out loud. when you're walking in freezing rain with no coat, wearing canvas sneakers that were already soaked through. 9 miles might as well be 90. I started down Harrison Avenue, the main road that would eventually lead to my grandmother's neighborhood. Cars passed without stopping, their headlights blinding in the rain, their tires spraying water that soaked me even more. I was invisible, just another shadow on the roadside. Nobody stopped to ask if I was okay. Nobody even slowed down. After about 2 miles, I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. My teeth were chattering so hard my jaw ached. My clothes were plastered to my skin, heavy with water, dragging me down. I kept walking. What else could I do? Go back and beg Angela to let me in. She'd made her position clear. I was nothing. I was nobody. I was a problem to be disposed of, so I walked. One shaking step at a time, focusing on the next streetlight, then the next one, then the next, breaking the impossible distance into manageable pieces. By mile 4, I was starting to feel warm, which I knew was bad. I'd learned about hypothermia in health class, knew that feeling warm, when you're freezing, is a sign that your body is shutting down. But knowing something and being able to stop it are two different things. My legs felt heavy, disconnected from my body, like I was watching someone else from very far away. There was a bus stop ahead, one of those covered benches. I thought maybe I'd just sit for a minute, just rest, just catch my breath. Then I'd finish the walk, just a quick break. I made it to the bench, sat down, and immediately my body just gave up. All the adrenaline that had been keeping me moving drained away. And suddenly I couldn't imagine standing up again. Couldn't remember why I'd been walking in the first place. The rain sounded nice, rhythmic, like a lullaby. And the bench wasn't comfortable, but it was better than walking. I could just close my eyes for a second, just rest, I don't remember passing out. I don't remember anything after sitting on that bench. The next thing I remember is noise, voices, bright lights, someone saying something about hypothermia and exposure, and 15 years old. Why is a child out here alone? The ambulance ride is a blur, fragments of memory, warm blankets, an oxygen mask, paramedics talking above my head like I wasn't really there, someone checking my vital signs, someone else calling dispatch to report an abandoned minor. And then hospital lights, that specific fluorescent glare that only exists in medical facilities. And a doctor's voice, gentle but firm. Can you tell me your name, sweetheart? Can you tell me what happened? The hospital staff saved my life that night, treated my hypothermia, got my core temperature back up, ran tests to make sure I hadn't suffered permanent damage. But the person who changed my life was the social worker who came to my room at 2 in the morning. Her name was Patricia Odom. She was in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. And she sat by my bed and asked me questions that nobody had ever bothered to ask before. What happened tonight, Maya? Why were you out in that storm? Where were you trying to go? Is this the first time something like this has happened? And I told her everything. I told her about Angela and Stephanie, about the lies, about the money I'd earned, about my father who chose peace over protecting his daughter. I told her about 7 years of walking on eggshells, of being perfect and grateful and small, of having a stepmother who resented my existence and a father too broken to fight for me. Patricia listened without interrupting, writing notes occasionally, nodding. And when I finished, she said something that made me cry all over again. Maya, you didn't deserve any of that. None of it was your fault. You were a child who needed protection, and the adults in your life failed you. But I'm not going to fail you, I promise. Patricia called my grandmother first, woke Elena up at 20:30 in the morning to tell her that her granddaughter was in the hospital with hypothermia after being expelled from her home. I heard my grandmother's voice through the phone, loud and furious and full of a rage I'd never heard from her before. She was at the hospital in 20 minutes. Must have broken every speed limit between her house and County General. She burst into my room like a hurricane, gray hair wild, still wearing her bathrobe, and she wrapped me in the fiercest hug I'd ever felt. My grandmother, Elena Torres, was 68 years old, barely 5 feet tall, and absolutely not someone you wanted to cross. My mother had been her only child, and when Mom died, Elena had tried to be there for me, tried to stay involved. But Angela had slowly, systematically cut her out, always had an excuse why I couldn't visit. Why Alina couldn't take me for weekends. Why family dinners had to be just the Taurus. Whitmore household, I'd seen my grandmother maybe 3 times a year for the past 7 years. Not because she didn't want me, but because Angela controlled access and my father never challenged it. Alina took one look at me in that hospital bed, shivering under heated blankets, and turned to Patricia with fury in her eyes. Who did this? Who put my granddaughter in danger? Patricia explained the situation calmly. Professionally, a minor expelled from home during dangerous weather, suspected parental neglect, possible abuse. CPS was opening an investigation. Police had been notified. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was a legal matter. Alina nodded slowly. Good, she said, because I want custody, emergency custody right now, and I want charges filed against every adult who let this happen. Patricia made some calls, woke up a judge, got an emergency custody hearing scheduled for 8 a.m. That same morning, my father and Angela were contacted by police at 4 a.m., told to present themselves at the hospital immediately, told that CPS was involved, told that there would be consequences. I heard they both looked shocked when Officer Martinez delivered the news, like they couldn't understand why throwing a teenager into a storm would result in police involvement. The disconnect was stunning. They showed up at 6 a.m., my father looking exhausted and confused, Angela looking angry and defensive. Stephanie wasn't with them. Convenient. They were escorted to a conference room where Patricia and 2 police officers were waiting. I wasn't present for that conversation, but Patricia told me later what was said. My father tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, that they'd only meant for me to walk to my grandmother's house, that they didn't know the weather would get so bad. Officer Martinez asked him why his 15-year-old daughter had no coat, no phone, no means of calling for help. My father had no answer. Angela tried to justify it, said I'd been stealing, said I was out of control, said they'd tried everything, but I just kept causing problems. Patricia asked for evidence, proof of this alleged theft. Angela produced my 520, still in the jar, still confiscated like evidence. Patricia asked for bank statements showing withdrawals I'd supposedly stolen. Angela didn't have them. Patricia asked for a police report filed about the theft. Angela hadn't filed one. Patricia asked why, if I was truly a thief, they hadn't involved authorities. Why they'd chosen exile instead of proper channels. Angela's face went red. She started talking about family privacy, about handling things internally, about not wanting to ruin my future with a criminal record. Patricia cut her off. If you truly believed this child had stolen from you, you would have called police. You would have filed a report. You would have pursued proper legal channels. Instead, you threw her into a dangerous storm with no protection, no resources, no way to contact help. That's not discipline. That's child endangerment, and you're going to answer for it. The emergency custody hearing happened at 8 a.m. in family court. Judge Michelle Crawford presiding. My grandmother presented her case, showed that she had a stable home, steady income from her pension, a history of trying to maintain contact with me that had been blocked by Angela. She had emails, text messages, a paper trail of attempted visits and phone calls that went unanswered. Patricia presented the facts. A 15-year-old found unconscious with hypothermia after walking 4 miles in freezing rain, expelled from home with no coat or phone. Parents who made no attempt to ensure her safety or provide alternative shelter. Evidence that suggested a pattern of emotional neglect and scapegoating. The hospital records showing my physical state when I was brought in, temperature 94. 3 degrees, early stage hypothermia, dehydration, exposure. My father tried to defend himself, tried to say he'd trusted Angela's judgment, tried to claim he didn't know how bad the storm was. Judge Crawford cut him off, her voice sharp as a knife. Mr. Torres, you are the parent. Your daughter is a minor child. You don't get to abdicate responsibility to your wife. You don't get to claim ignorance when your child ends up hospitalized. You had a duty to protect her, and you failed spectacularly. She granted emergency temporary custody to Elena Torres, effective immediately. Ordered that I would stay with my grandmother until a full investigation was completed. Ordered my father to have no contact with me except through supervised visitation. which would only happen if I agreed to it, and she ordered CPS to conduct a full investigation of the Torah's Whitmore household, including interviews with Stephanie, school officials, neighbors, anyone who might have witnessed a pattern of behavior. As we left the courthouse, Angela tried to approach me, tried to say something about this all being a big misunderstanding. My grandmother stepped between us without breaking stride. You don't talk to her. You don't look at her. You threw away your right to any contact when you threw her into that storm. We kept walking, my grandmother's hand firm on my shoulder, guiding me toward her old Toyota in the parking lot. I didn't look back, didn't want to see their faces, didn't want to give them any more of my attention or my energy. They'd taken enough. Living with my grandmother was like learning to breathe after years of holding my breath. Her house was small but warm, decorated with pictures of my mother, with memories of a woman I barely remembered but desperately missed. Elena had dinner ready every night at 6, homework done at the kitchen table where she could help if I needed it, bedtime at 10 on school nights, 11 on weekends, rules that made sense, structure that felt safe instead of suffocating, and most importantly, she listened, actually listened when I talked, asked questions, cared about my answers. The CPS investigation moved faster than I expected. Patricia Odom was thorough, relentless. She interviewed everyone. Teachers who confirmed that I'd been working at the coffee shop, who verified my pay stubs, who testified that I'd never shown any behavioral problems. The coffee shop manager who provided employment records showing exactly how much I'd earned, and when neighbors who'd seen me walking to school in all weather, carrying heavy bags, looking increasingly withdrawn and anxious, school counselors who'd noticed the change in me over the years, how I'd gone from an outgoing 8-year-old to a quiet, anxious teenager who flinched at raised voices. And then Patricia interviewed Stephanie, without her mother present, in a CPS office with a recording running, and Stephanie cracked like cheap pottery. She admitted lying about the theft, admitted going through my room, admitted that her mother had encouraged her to find something, anything that could be used against me. She said Angela resented me, was jealous of my academic success, wanted me gone so she could focus on her own daughter without comparison. She said Tyler, her boyfriend, had been pressuring her to get money, said they needed cash for their plans to move to California together, said they'd planned to take my MIT money once Angela kicked me out, claim it as reimbursement for all the stealing I'd supposedly done. Patricia asked Stephanie why she'd lied, why she'd been willing to destroy her stepsister's life. Stephanie's answer was chilling in its honesty. Because Mom said you'd be fine. She said, you'd just go live with your grandmother and everything would work out. We didn't think anyone would care. The recording of that interview became evidence. Proof that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a disciplinary action gone wrong. This was calculated, premeditated, a plan to remove me from the household by any means necessary. My father was interviewed separately, and according to Patricia, he fell apart, admitted he'd been wrong, said he'd been weak, said he'd let Angela make decisions he should have questioned. But his remorse was too little too late. He'd chosen his wife over his daughter, chosen comfort over protection, chosen to believe lies because the truth required him to be strong, and he just didn't have it in him anymore. His grief had hollowed him out, and he'd filled the empty spaces with Angela's certainty instead of doing the hard work of being a parent. 3 months after that November night, the final custody hearing happened. Alina was granted full permanent legal custody of me. My father's parental rights weren't terminated, but they were severely restricted. Supervised visitation only. If I wanted it, no decision-making authority, no access to my personal information or school records. Financial support ordered. But custody belonged to my grandmother. The judge also addressed the MIT program. The $520 I'd earned was returned to me, and the judge ordered my father to pay the remaining $280 to cover program costs. You tried to punish your daughter for working hard and pursuing her education. Judge Crawford said, now you're going to fund that education. Consider it your penance. Angela and Stephanie faced consequences too. The district attorney filed charges, child endangerment, filing false statements to law enforcement, contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Angela tried to claim she hadn't known how serious the storm was, tried to say she'd made an error in judgment, but the weather reports from that night told a different story. Severe storm warnings, temperature dropping into the 30s, dangerous conditions. She'd thrown me out knowing exactly what I'd face. The charges resulted in a plea deal. Angela pled guilty to reduced charges, got 2 years probation, mandatory parenting classes, a permanent record, and a no-contact order. She wasn't allowed within 500 feet of me. Stephanie got community service, probation until she turned 18, and a stern warning from the judge that any future offenses would result in adult prosecution. I went to MIT that summer, spent 6 weeks surrounded by brilliant, passionate students who wanted to build and create and solve problems. I learned more in those 6 weeks than I had in years of regular school. And I met professors who saw potential in me, who encouraged me to apply to their programs when I graduated high school, who treated me like someone worth investing in. It was transformative, life-changing, proof that I'd been right to fight for this opportunity, right to keep working even when everything felt impossible. My father tried to reach out a few times over the next few years, supervised visits I rarely agreed to, letters I didn't read, attempts at reconciliation that felt more about easing his guilt than actually rebuilding a relationship. I saw him maybe 4 times in high school, awkward meetings in neutral locations where he apologized and I nodded, and we both pretended this could somehow be fixed. But some things, once broken, don't go back together the same way. Trust is like that. Once you learn that your parent will abandon you, when things get difficult, you can't unknow it. You can't pretend it didn't happen. I graduated high school with honors, full scholarship to Caltech for mechanical engineering. My grandmother cried at graduation, held my hand during the ceremony, told me my mother would be so proud. I cried too, not just for what I'd achieved, but for everything I'd survived to get there. College was everything I dreamed it would be, challenging, exciting, full of people who cared about learning and building and creating. I thrived, made real friends, dated occasionally, though trust issues made relationships complicated. Graduated with my bachelor's degree in 3 years instead of 4, went straight into a master's program. After my master's, I was recruited by a robotics company in Seattle. They offered me a position developing prosthetic limbs, work that felt meaningful, important, like I was using my skills to actually help people. I took the job, moved across the country, built a life that felt entirely mine. I'm 29 now, lead engineer on a project that's developing affordable, adaptive prosthetics for children. Work that matters, work that makes a difference. I have an apartment with a view of Puget Sound, friends who feel like chosen family, a career I earned through stubbornness and late nights and refusing to let anyone make me small. And then yesterday, an email arrived. Subject line, urgent family matter. Sender Angela Whitmore's attorney. I stared at that email for a long time before opening it, wondering what she could possibly want after 14 years of silence. The message was brief, clinical. Attorneys speak for something desperate. It explained that Angela had been diagnosed with kidney failure, that she needed a transplant, that her daughter Stephanie wasn't a match, that they'd tested extended family with no success, and that medical records showed I might be a compatible donor. The email asked, very politely, if I would consider getting tested, consider donating a kidney to save my former stepmother's life. I laughed, actually laughed out loud in my office. The absurdity was stunning. The woman who threw me into a storm, who called me a thief and a liar, who tried to destroy my future for 520, that woman now needed me to save her life, needed me to give her an organ, needed me to be generous and forgiving and selfless. The irony was so thick I could taste it. My assistant knocked on my door, asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, just received some unexpected news. She left and I sat there staring at that email, trying to figure out what I felt. Not anger, I'd processed that years ago in therapy, worked through the hurt and betrayal until it didn't have power over me anymore. Not satisfaction either. I wasn't happy that Angela was sick. Wasn't glad she was suffering. I'm not that person. Mostly I felt nothing, a vast indifference. Like reading about a stranger's medical problems, this woman had nothing to do with my life, hadn't been part of my world in over a decade. Why should I care what happened to her now? I thought about my grandmother. What would Alina want me to do? She'd always taught me that being strong meant being kind, that surviving cruelty didn't mean becoming cruel. But she'd also taught me that I didn't owe my pain to the people who caused it, that forgiveness was optional and self-preservation was valid. I thought about the girl I'd been at 15, walking through freezing rain, believing she was worthless because the adults in her life had told her so. That girl deserved better than I'd gotten, deserved protection and love and safety. I couldn't go back and give her those things, but I could honor her by protecting the woman she became, by not sacrificing my health, my body, my well-being for someone who had proven they didn't value me. I drafted a response, kept it professional, brief, thanked the attorney for reaching out, explained that I would not be getting tested, would not be donating, wished Angela the best in finding a suitable donor, but my answer was no. The attorney responded within an hour, more urgent this time, explained that Angela's situation was dire, that without a transplant her prognosis was poor, asked if I would reconsider, suggested that this could be an opportunity for closure, for healing, for reconciliation. I responded again, even briefer this time. My decision is final. I don't owe Angela Whitmore my kidney or my time. I wish her well, but I'm not the solution to her problem. Please don't contact me again. I sent it, blocked the email address, and went back to work on my prosthetics project, helping kids who'd lost limbs, kids who deserved better than the hand life had dealt them, kids like I'd been once, vulnerable and hopeful and deserving of protection. That night I called my grandmother, told her about the email, about Angela's request, about my response. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm proud of you, Mija, proud that you know your worth, proud that you won't sacrifice yourself for people who never valued you. Your mother would be proud too." We talked for another hour about work, about life, about the past and how it shapes us, but doesn't have to define us. Before we hung up, she said something that stuck with me. "You survived that storm, Maya. You survived all of it. You don't owe your survival to anyone." She was right. I'd survived. More than survived, I'd thrived, built a life that teenage girl walking through freezing rain could never have imagined. I had meaningful work, real relationships, a future I'd created for myself through determination and refusal to accept other people's limitations. Angela throwing me out that night was meant to break me, to prove I was worthless, to remove me from her perfect family. But it did the opposite. It freed me, set me on a path away from people who diminished me, toward people who celebrated me. The thing about storms is they're temporary. The rain stops, the wind dies down, the sun comes back out, but the person who walks out of the storm is different than the person who walked in. That November night changed me permanently, taught me that I was stronger than I'd known, that I could survive things I thought would destroy me, that the people who were supposed to protect me might fail, but I could protect myself. I learned to be my own advocate, my own defender, my own source of worth. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how things turned out, if I wish I'd had a normal family, a father who fought for me, a stepmother who loved me, and honestly, no, I don't regret it, because suffering shaped me, survival made me strong, and strength made me who I am. I'm not grateful for the pain, but I'm grateful for who I became because of it. I'm proud of the woman I am, proud of the work I do, proud of the life I've built from nothing. I don't need Angela's approval or my father's validation. I have my own. My father reached out last year, another attempt at reconciliation, wanted to meet for coffee, to talk, to explain himself. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity, wanted to see if he'd changed, if he'd grown, if he understood what he'd done. We met at a neutral cafe, talked for an hour. He apologized again, said losing me was his greatest regret, said he thought about that night constantly, said he wished he could go back and make different choices. I listened, acknowledged his pain, but I didn't absolve him. I told him that I'd forgiven him years ago, not for his sake, but for mine, because carrying anger was exhausting, and I had better things to do with my energy. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation, didn't mean rebuilding a relationship, didn't mean giving him access to my life. I'd moved on, built something beautiful from the ashes of what he destroyed, and he wasn't part of that, might never be part of that. He cried, asked if there was anything he could do to make it right. I told him the truth. No, there isn't. Some things can't be fixed, only accepted. We finished our coffee, hugged awkwardly. Went our separate ways. I haven't heard from him since. I think he finally understood that I didn't need him, didn't need his approval or his presence. I was whole without him, complete. My own person. The little girl who needed a father died in that storm. The woman who walked out of it learned to father herself, to be her own source of strength and validation and love. These days when it rains, I don't think about that November night as much. I think about the work I'm doing, the kids I'm helping, the life I've built. But sometimes, when thunder rolls and the sky opens up, I remember the girl I was, walking alone in the dark, believing she was worthless because people she loved had told her so. And I wish I could go back and tell her what I know now, that she's going to make it, that she's stronger than she knows, that the storm is terrible, but temporary, and the sun on the other side is worth walking toward. I wish I could tell her that she'll build something beautiful, that she'll help people, that she'll find family in unexpected places and create a life she's proud of. I wish I could tell her that Angela was wrong, that her worth isn't determined by people who can't see it. That being abandoned doesn't mean being unlovable. It means the people who abandoned her weren't capable of love. But I can't go back, can only move forward, carrying that girl with me, honoring her survival by living fully, by refusing to be small, by being exactly who I was meant to be. Before I let you go, I want to say thank you for staying with me through this entire story. If this resonated with you, if you've survived your own storm, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you watching from? What time is it there? Have you ever had to choose yourself over the people who were supposed to choose you? Your stories matter, you matter, and I see you. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories, helps other survivors know they're not alone. There's another story waiting on your screen right now. Click it. Watch it keep this conversation going. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of every good thing that comes your way. The storm is temporary, but you're forever. Before I let you go, I want to say thank you for staying with me through this entire story. If this resonated with you, if you've survived your own storm, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you watching from? What time is it there? Have you ever had to choose yourself over the people who were supposed to choose you? Your stories matter, you matter. And I see you. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories, helps other survivors know they're not alone. There's another story waiting on your screen right now. Click it, watch it, keep this conversation going. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of every good thing that comes your way. The storm is temporary, but you're forever.